It is the 30th anniversary of the Trek Y bike. Here at Fairwheel, me and Jason, we have the pleasure of getting to play with all the latest and greatest stuff, doing some really cool builds. We thought it would be neat to build the bike that I wanted as a teenager, which happened to be the bike that he wanted in college. And so we found this puppy, and we're gonna restore this thing, get it all nice and fixed up.
This was actually an important bike. It's a URT design. It wasn't a brilliant design, but it did move the cranks from the main frame to the swing arm so that when you stand, in effect, you're creating a lockout and giving yourself a hardtail. This was the first full suspension that really got people to want to move off their hardtails and onto a full suspension. And it really was a big catalyst for what we've got today with great riding full suspension bikes. Like Garrett said, this is something we both wanted 30 years ago. Neither one of us could afford it at the time. I had only been working here at the shop a few years and, struggling college student. But 30 years later, we had the chance to pick one up super cheap. So we thought, why not pick it up, build it. I think the original plan was for us to resto mod it and build it with modern parts. But we just decided that because it's not a great design, it really didn't make sense. So in the end, we opted to build it how we would have built it 30 years ago, using sort of period appropriate pieces, and build the dream bike that I always wanted, that he always wanted. We had asked, like he said, we had asked Cole to be part of this, but he was so young when this came out that he decided he did not really want to play a role in it. So Garrett here's been doing a lot of the camera work on this one. Unfortunately, you're stuck with me on screen most of the time. Hopefully this will make up for it. We've got some fun plans, and I think the URT design will sort of lend itself well to what we're planning on doing.
So step one, what we're gonna do, give the bike a bath, strip it, throw all the old parts in the solvent tank, get those nice and clean. And once we do that, you'll see us back here again. So let's get started.
So we got everything taken apart. All the components have been run through the ultrasonic cleaner with some simple green, just to kind of give us a sort of clean piece that we can look at and see what we've got to work with. So let's start with the frame. It's in pretty good shape, no cracks, no major chips. The color is horrible, so we're gonna have to do something about that. We're probably going to strip it to bare carbon, see what the carbon looks like. Then at that point, make a decision whether to keep bare carbon or do a repaint. We'll wet sand it down, starting with 400, then 600, 800, and down to 1,000 as we get through the layers. There are a few things worth note. When you're sanding down a frame, it already takes long enough. So don't make it take longer by doing things like leaving the stickers. It's a lot easier to remove the decals before starting to sand than actually sanding through them. Best way I've found to remove the decals is with a heat gun and a plastic razor blade, and they just lift right up with a little bit of heat. Once those are off, we can deal with the raised decals. These guys, the best way to get them off is with some monofilament line, and just use it like dental floss and work it behind the decal and lift it up, and it'll pop these off in one piece so they can be reused. The cable stops are a little more difficult because on these older frames, they're both riveted and glued. Luckily, the glue, the epoxy that they used back in the day, wasn't as strong as what they're using today. So first you gotta drill out the rivets, collect those through the head tube. Once those are out, you need to take a punch on one of the wide flat sides and just tap it. And you're just trying to lift an edge. Once you get an edge up, you can go back with your monofilament line, pull it underneath, lift the whole thing off. It's also worth maybe running a razor blade around the edge just to make sure you don't lift any carbon with it. So that's the plan for the frame. Let's look at the rest of what we've got to work with. The swing arm, overall in good shape. no major issues. We did pull the hanger off. We'll strip that back to the original silver because the paint Trek put on it won't stick. We will also strip this down and repaint it, probably paint it the same color as the fork. The fork is a Judy SL long travel, and the outers have seen better days. Lots of corrosion through here, down here. The decals, when I went to just pick at an edge with a fingernail, the decal fell right off and took all the paint with it. So this is certainly going to have to be refinished. Luckily, the stanchions and all the internals were in great shape. So we'll do new seals, new wipers, clean and oil. We'll probably replace the springs just in case they've gotten a little worn over the years. As for the rear shock, we've got two choices. This bike came with both options on the top tier model, the Vanilla RC from Fox and the StrataShock Pro. Both of these are in good working order. We'll decide as we get further along which one we're going to use, probably just based on which one looks better in the bike. After that, we've got the crankset. The bottom bracket that was in it, UN72, feels perfect. It's an XT level bottom bracket, so we'll just clean this up and reuse this. The cranks, on the other hand, while they were nice XT cranks, when pulling them off, we did find a large crack on the back of the non-drive side arm. So these are going away, and we'll have to find an alternate for those. The grips he had on this bike were modern grips. Certainly don't want to use those. Cassette was actually in really good shape, cleaned up nicely. It looks almost new, but it is an HG51, which is lower spec than I would have run on this bike. So we're going to replace this with a new old stock XTR that I have. Now we've got the bar. This was the original Icon bar. It's actually in surprisingly good shape. There's no dents, there's no crumples from stem clamps. The anodizing has certainly seen better days, but we're gonna see if we can salvage this. We're gonna try and remove the anodizing, polish it up, see if we can make it look nice again. If not, we'll replace it with something period specific. Bringing in the levers. These were in really good shape. After cleaning, the detents are pretty solid. They need to be lubed and flushed a little bit, but the gear indicators are working well. The internal barrel adjusters are pretty gross. We'll take some white vinegar to those, see if we can't get that corrosion and rust off, or we'll just replace the inners. But overall, these are in perfect shape. Next up, we've got the Icon stem. We probably won't be using this. 30 years of force pulling on this sliding hinge design could have left stress crack corrosion inside. So there is a chance of failure, and it's just not very nice looking. There were much nicer stems of the day that we can use. Front derailleur, Shimano XT. This was the only non-XTR component on the bike. It does have a few small patches of rust just here and there. So white vinegar will get rid of that and make it look good as new. And we'll be keeping that. Rear derailleur is a Rapid Rise XTR. Super excited to be using one of these again. If you don't know about them, this is a low normal derailleur. So instead of the spring pulling the cage into the smaller cogs, the spring pulls the cage into the larger cogs, with the cable pulling it in the opposite direction. This does have a cracked pulley and just a little bit of wear here and here. A few of the bolts have a little bit of rust, but we'll be replacing most of those anyway, because it was the 90s. We were always putting colored bolts in all of our components anyway. The brakes overall are in good shape. There's not a lot to do here. We will want to disassemble them, clean up the bearings inside, definitely got to replace these pads. They're loaded up with metal shavings and big chunks missing. There is a little bit of corrosion on some of the linkage that we can take care of, and lots of rust and corrosion on some of these washers, but these are all still modern pieces that are easy to replace. So we'll probably just be replacing the concave convex washers, as well as the pinch bolt, mount nuts, all that sort of stuff. This is what it used for the shock lockout. It's in great shape, minus the barrel adjuster, which has a ton of rust. Either clean that up with white vinegar or replace it, or maybe just run it without a lockout. It's a URT, so in theory it shouldn't need a lockout. I mean, that was why they designed the frames that way. Headset, we've got the original Cane Creek A headset, and it's in perfect shape. It spins smooth, everything's clean, bearings are still sealed, no notching, so that's going right back on the bike with a little bit more cleaning. Post is the original Icon post. We won't be using this just for aesthetics. It's just, there were a million nice posts available in the mid-90s. So very few of us actually kept the original posts. We usually replaced them with something a bit more unique, a little lighter, and definitely with more color. Saddle's the Bontrager FS10, which actually had a really great shape and was a really comfortable saddle. This one's a bit worn, and I think we have some better choices in my spare parts box, so we'll see what we've got. We probably won't use this. All right, so it's time to do the handlebar, see if we can get the anodizing off. Garrett cleaned it up real well with some isopropyl alcohol, and then we've got just basic easy off oven cleaner. And we're just gonna give it a good spray. Flip it over. Then we'll come back in about 5 minutes and hit it with a wet towel and see what it looks like. All right, it's been about 5 minutes. We've got a wet towel. Let's see how it looks. Most of the way there. We'll do one more coat and we should be good to go. That's pretty much got the anodizing off. Now we'll have to clean it up and take it to the polishing wheel and see what we can turn it into.
All right, so now we're going to clean up the brake track. I have some 600 grit sandpaper that I'm going to use. Just tear a small piece off and go to town. Alrighty, just wanted to show you guys really quickly all the parts that I cleaned in the white vinegar. It came out really nice. Some of it was pretty grubby before. It got all the rust off. I don't know if you remember, but this little barrel adjuster from the lockout was super rusty, and it looks really nice now. And yeah, I'm not gonna have to get any new bolts or anything, so I'm really happy with it. Remember that next time you're cleaning parts up, vinegar works. All right, next I wanted to just talk really quickly about the shifters. These cleaned up super nice. The one thing I haven't done though is flush them out on the inside. The nature of shifters like this is that when the grease inside dries, it kind of turns into glue, and the shifters get really sticky. Sometimes the paddles don't do anything when you engage them because the pawls and the springs are kind of being held back by the hardened grease that's in there. So a lot of times with old stuff like this, whether it's a mountain shifter or a road shifter, we like to just give them a quick little flush on the inside and loosen up all of that hardened, gluey grease. Today I'm going to use a foaming citrus degreaser, but something else that works great is just plain old alcohol. So I'm going to just really quickly open one of these up and spray it out so you guys can see what that's like. These Shimano shifters are great because they come apart pretty easily. It's just a little door that you open. You just take out this screw. And you can see it's not too bad, but like I said, you know, there might be some grease in there that's holding some stuff back. So spray it out really good. In doing this, it'll break up all the grease, and then you can let it kind of drain out of there, let it dry out, and then you can re-lubricate it, and you will have a really fresh shifter.
All right, so we're back. It's been probably 8 to 10 hours of sanding. Not really sure what it took, but it was a couple of days of spare time. Because we thought we wanted to save the carbon and keep it raw, we started with a 400 rather than a 240. We did 400, 600, then 1000. Still a couple of little spots to take care of, but 99% there. We do have to remount the stops. And the matte finish, we're probably not going to keep that. There was really not a lot of matte products at this time. Almost everything was gloss, so we're probably going to lay down a gloss, and then we've got some custom decals coming for it. We'll get the stops put back on, and then we'll get this thing finished up. There wasn't a lot of filler on it. There were just a couple of little spots which are hard to see. It was easy enough to get those out with just a razor blade or a pick, and it's part of the nature of the frame. You get to see the actual functionality of the frame rather than an aesthetic layer. So let's keep going. So it's been a couple weeks and we're back with an update. We got the frame stripped, glossed, custom decals done. Pretty happy with how it turned out. There are definitely a few voids you can see here and there. Overall, it came out great, and you get to see the actual structure of the carbon rather than just an aesthetic layer on the outside. From there, we also finished the swing arm. We did it in the same Judy yellow, which for those of you that are looking for paint codes, it's RAL 1023. We did that to match the fork, which came out almost new looking. Everything polished up nicely. We were able to get the corrosion off. We stripped it to bare metal, repainted, again, custom decals. Eagle-eyed people might realize these decals are a year earlier than this fork actually is, but the color scheme worked a lot better with the bike, so we decided to go with them. We're really not covering a lot of paint because there's a million videos on the internet of paint, and people far more skilled than us Ito has some great videos if you're looking at paint advice. Moving on from there, we have finished stripping, cleaning, de-rusting all the mounting hardware, and it turned out gorgeous. The handlebar that we de-anodized, we decided not to polish it to a high sheen, but leave it with its bead blasted look. It has more of a titanium finish this way. It kind of matches what we would have had with like a Tech from that era. We just sort of felt it matched a little bit better without its high sheen and smooth surface. We'll be mating that to one of these stems. Not sure yet which one. We'll work that out as we do the final build. Probably leaning towards the nuke proof just because core stems, they're a lot more common. Nuke proof were definitely less common and just a little more unique. So this is probably the direction we'll be going. We did get the brakes done, new pads, new concave convex washers, de-rusted the centering bolts. Looks almost like a new brake with just a little bit of wear here and there on it. Levers also came out nice. We did get those cleaned and functioning well. The detents are solid and smooth, and everything turns and functions well. The front derailleur, there wasn't much to do. We removed the rust, replaced the bolt with red. There is a little bit of hazing on the band clamp that we might try and polish off, but the first polishing didn't really take it off, so that might just remain. The lockout adjuster, we did have this barrel adjuster, was heavily rusted. It cleaned up nice in the vinegar, so this is going to get reused. We decided to do an anodized red seat collar. The skewers, we didn't go original. We went something a little more modern, but with an original look. This is a KC&C. It kind of looks like the old dog bones. But we did mix the gold in with the red just to make it a little more unique. And it is titanium with aluminum handles. Grips, we're going to choose from yellow or black, to be determined as we finish up. Saddles, again, two choices, an original Flight and a Selle Italia SLR, which is actually 1 year off. So this is a bit more original and probably what we'll go with, even though this is in a little bit nicer of a shape. The rear derailleur, we went ahead, replaced the cracked pulley. We did new pulleys, main pivot bolts, pulley wheels, and the B screw. Cassette, we're using new old stock XTR. The wheels we opted for were some spins, which we cleaned up. We removed the decals. We sanded the brake tracks clean. We may redo the decals in red, but for now we're going to leave them blank and see how it looks. After that, we've got this seat post is what we decided on. Not the first carbon seat post ever made, but as far as I know, this is the first full carbon offset post. Came from a company called Buffalo Composites in Texas, and the length is just perfect for the seat height that we need on this one. It also kind of blends in with the idea of being ahead of its time. Cranks, first thought was to do these cyborgs, but I think in the end we're going to go this direction and use these new old stock Zipp 380s, just because it was a rarer crank, a little more cutting edge, and just kind of blends in with the theme of being, again, ahead of its time for the 90s. There were only a couple hundred of these made. It almost feels a shame to pull a new old stock out of a crank to do a build, but I have another set, and they're just going to look great on this bike, I think. For the chain rings for them, we reached out to Profile And Matt was nice enough to dig through the rafters and come up with a set of new old stock chain rings for us. We're just going to do a 2x. We're not going to do a triple front. I believe he has more of these, so if anybody's in need of 90s chain rings, maybe reach out to Profile Racing and see what they've got left. And that's pretty much the build, so let's go put it together.